Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Five Questions with Demand Drive. Today, I am very excited to have on Ollie Whitfield. We're going to be talking about email, cold email specifically. So before we jump into it and before we dive into some of the data that Ollie was able to pull, do me and the audience a favor, Ollie. Tell us about you. I know enough about you already, but I'm sure that our audience doesn't know the man, the myth, the legend who is Ollie Whitfield.
Don't think I've ever been called the man, the myth, the legend before, so that's
Wow,
a first.
I'll
Thank you,
take it.
buddy. Yeah, so thanks, gentlemen, for having me here. This is going to be fun. I feel a little bit under the weather today, but it helps a lot when you know you're going to spend some time talking about cold emails with your buddies. So that's helping a lot.
That's
And
the
I'm looking
cure.
at a whole bunch of stats here that tell me some cool things about what goes wrong, what goes right when you're sending a cold email. And I'm lucky enough to be able to find that because I work for VanillaSoft, a leading sales engagement provider, and we've recently acquired, in case you don't know, a company called AutoClose, who are very email centric in the same kind of area, which means I'm able to look at their data archive and also the VanillaSoft archive as well to merge some stats here and see how
Nice.
sales reps across the world, North America, are doing their thing, and it throws up some cool surprises.
Nice. Yeah, I think this is really pertinent as a conversation because you see it all the time. People are talking about how email send rates, they're at an all-time high at this point, but engagement rates are at all-time lows. So like something is wrong there. There's a disconnect between the fact that we're sending out more emails than ever, but getting less response than ever. So I think a lot of it you can attribute to some of the bigger, like more systemic issues within sales development as a whole right now. But a lot of it can also get attributed to poor email processes or best practices. So I'm excited to, dive into some of the data that you pulled here and hopefully help our audience who might be struggling with their email engagement, understand some of these best practices and implement them and up their engagement rates. So, and I'm excited. We can dig in. I do want to add a caveat here because it's always tough with email. Not every template or subject line or send time or whatever is going to make sense for every industry. It's such a sticky subject to deal with. So there are things that you can control as an SDR, and I think we're going to touch on a lot of that today. But know that there are a lot of things you can't control to improve deliverability and engagement. So take this with a grain of salt for sure, but definitely some things to think about as you're putting together cold email campaigns. So, Ollie, you have a ton of data on cold emails, like you were saying. So, since you pulled out some great metrics and best practices, before we kind of dive into that, I wanted to get your overall view of what cold email looks like now. Generally good, generally bad. Why do you have that point of view before we can even dive into some of the specifics on your data?
Generally, not bad. It's interesting
Not
because I've
bad.
not held that many positions before where you sort of become triggered into the prospecting general titles that a lot of people get. You know, if you go into a data collection system, you type in marketing, then you'll probably get quite a lot of people, and that now includes me just because of my title. But previously, I was a project manager doing sort of similar stuff, but I never really got prospected too much unless it was a random ABM or a piece of spam. So now I'm starting to get that a little bit more. My perception has changed, and I just find it interesting when I read some of them. I don't get hundreds a day. You'll get way more than me, and I'd love to know what you think. But the ones that I get, they they just stand out immediately because there's continued use of the same things that are synonymous with this is a sales email that isn't especially personalized, but it's not, god awful that it's just can afford a spam. They're not following up or trying to explore synergies and doing all these things that no one wants to do. But it's still like, did you get my last email?
Mm-hmm.
Or did you have 5 minutes to chat tomorrow? And I'm like, tomorrow? 5 minutes? Like, I just know that that's not quite, they didn't hit home on something enough that I even replied, let alone that I forgot to reply knowing that I wanted a call. It's just some
Mm-hmm.
of those little 5% things that might make a big difference. But that's just in my experience. So you're getting a lot more than me. So what kind of stuff are you seeing?
I don't know about a lot more. I definitely get prospected regularly, just based on the fact that like I'm in marketing and I technically have some decision making capabilities, but like I'm not the ultimate buyer. But I would agree that like I get a mix. I get a lot of really good emails, which is great because I see SDRs who are putting in the work, who are doing their due diligence to research me, research Demand Drive as a company, and like it shows in the email. And I see stuff like that, and I save it in a separate folder, sort of like a wall of fame, so that when I want to show someone what a good email looks like I've got a whole folder of them. But to your point, I also get a bunch where, the same canned, like, can I get 15 minutes on your calendar, CTA, just a really basic, non-personalized template that I know is a template because they've, probably sent it to two other people at my company. Like you get a bit of both. So I like the fact that you have a positive outlook and the fact that, cold email isn't that bad. I think a lot of people would say that it is bad, and a lot of people probably get more cold emails than you or I get. A lot more of those canned, sort of like templated emails, non-personalized, bad CTA style ones, just by virtue of the law of averages. Like they're getting more emails, so they're getting more bad ones.
Yeah,
I
like
don't
I
know if we're in a
accept.
fortuitous position here to not get as many, to see maybe the better side of email as well.
Yeah, I think we both accept that most of the time, we're not an IBM Oracle type company
Right.
that most people, or maybe it's unfair to say most, but a lot of companies would say is their tier one account where you personalize the hell out of the email and you
Mhm.
send a gift and whatever else to open the door a bit, and then you get some people call it 540 and 500, or I've heard 5, 10, 50, or whatever else. We may well be part of the 10, or most likely the bigger number, which means we get the broader impression. But just sometimes you get the odd terrible one where it's clearly just any industry, any person, any role all in
Right.
one. But I can appreciate at least sometimes, okay, well, they sort of touched upon a departmental thing or a industry or a company sized thing. I can sort of see where it comes from, and it makes it relevant a
Yeah.
little bit, but
Yeah.
it doesn't go
Relevant.
too much further than that for me in experience just yet.
Yeah. I mean, we're someone's P1, right? Like someone out there is looking at Vanilla Soft or at Demand Drive and they're like, that's my target account. And so we're getting those emails every once in a while. But yeah, we're not like the IBMs or Oracles of the world. I'm sure that the decision makers there get obviously a lot more bad emails, but they probably get a lot more good ones. And unfortunately, because there are so many bad emails out there, the good ones get shoved into the same pile of cold message and probably never get read. So it's like I was saying, some industry and systemic issues there.
Yeah, those people are getting a lot of Starbucks vouchers or whatever else.
Free coffee for
You
life.
get the good with the bad.
All right, so let's think about we've thought about cold email as a whole, as a concept, cold email. But when you think about email, there's two components to it. It's the message itself, but then before the message, there's the subject line. Obviously, a lot of attention has been paid to subject lines in terms of like engagement rates, open rates, click rates, stuff like that. Because without a good subject line, you're probably not going to get your email read. You're not intriguing your prospect to open the message in any capacity. So across all industries, one thing that you can control for is length. So I know you have some data. What do you think is the ideal length of a subject line?
Again, it's with all of this data that I have, it's all B2B, so that's one thing. It is kind of across every industry. So again, different times of the day, different days of the week, different roles, different departments, even within the same company, they're all going to sort of behave differently. So it's with a pinch of salt, maybe another one, but it's more of a guide. I see it than this is the best practice and you should copy it.
Right.
Because every industry will have ebbs and flows, but from what I've seen, and generally this kind of compares well with what I have seen in our own sales team and in the emails that I personally get, and the people that in the management positions also get on our team. The subject line rough average is about 6 words, roughly, and that sort of surprised me. But I thought it may be longer. I was hoping it would be a bit shorter because I think depending on the phone that you have, you probably get 5 words roughly, unless there's a long word in the subject line before it
Mm-hmm.
truncates. then you don't read the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I put a quick poll out on LinkedIn asking what people thought it would be, and I put 1 to 5 and 5+ and 10+. Within the first like 20 minutes, 75% of people said above 10 words. I'm like, damn,
Excuse me.
what kind of emails are these? You can't read that even on a Gmail, let alone
Yeah.
a phone, considering most people read email on the phone. But yes, so 6 words is what the median rough average is. But very, very close behind it is 4 words. And I mean 0.2% difference in the total number of emails I've looked at, which is 680,000.
Jeez.
So 0.2% difference. The engagement on that on those 2 words less in that email is way better. So instead of going for 6, which is what most people have seemed to have done at this point, I'm going, maybe you go for 4, maybe you go for 3.
So the shorter the better. I mean, like, it's funny that you thought, the shorter the better. But the poll that you kind of informally took, people are looking for longer subject lines. Why do you think that somebody would want to put a longer subject line in their email, when in reality, like, you're seeing the data show shorter, more succinct subject lines are getting the job done?
I think it's difficult to write compelling and short. If I tried to write, I've tried to now use it, even just in my own documentation, I use bullet points rigidly. The entire document is a bullet point list, sub tiering and everything. It just eliminates my waffle. I still managed to make the document really long though.
Yeah.
It's just part of how it goes. So when you write, it's people in marketing say copywriting is really, really important. I'm not especially strong at it myself, but it's being really concise. And most people, if they said a sentence, if you transcribe what I'm saying now, it's probably 4 miles long and I haven't taken a breath or a full stop. It's just how it goes. It's one of those where if you can say it a little bit quicker, often it's better. Even that sentence, if I took out the word little bit and I just said, say it quicker, it's better. That's a better subject line because it's a little bit less longer.
That's funny. Yeah, I think that, and I've seen a lot of discourse around this recently, and I've fallen into it myself, but like, copywriting as an SDR, as a sales rep, obviously for me in marketing, like, it's a skill that maybe not a lot of people looked at as super valuable outside of like being able to craft a compelling message. But like, when you really think about ad copywriting, you're kind of doing the same thing with a subject line. Like, you're selling someone to open your email. So basic copywriting best practices can really help with you crafting a succinct message that gets your point across in 4 words, versus someone who's writing a 12-word subject line, like you said, gets fully cut off by Gmail or on their phone. They have no idea what the first line of the message looks like. They're getting stuff just thrown at them in a subject line. Like, I'm deleting that message almost immediately, 100% of the time.
Yeah, like I just did a quick calculation on my fingers and thumbs. The best way you can achieve is 6 words. On a phone, I'm barely getting to the word achieve,
Yeah.
and I don't even get to know what the thing is by that point. But
Right.
if it somehow get better at something, then that's 3, 4, 5 or something like that. So it's just any way you can cut a word or 2 words or as much as you can, barring it still reads in the English language, or it's not extreme text message talk. It's not like LOL,
like grunting,
WBU or something. Then okay, but yeah, concise seems to be the way that's working.
Okay, so with subject lines, the more concise and the shorter the better. I would assume, and I haven't seen any of your data, but I would assume that the same would go for the body of an email. So moving from subject line to actual email, I know I don't want to read an essay in my inbox. I'm of the opinion that short and sweet performs better. And like, subject line length is something that you can control for as an SDR. You can try and get your point across in less words rather than more. But I let the data speak for itself. What do you find to be the ideal length for a cold email?
I found a median range, and the reply rate is sort of interesting as it goes up and down a little bit. So in some ways it's semi inconclusive, that I think it's sort of down into the context of what the email says, because every email might perform slightly better or worse than another. So the rough average that I've seen is 70 words in the email body, and up to around 140, 150 is the bulk of what people are using, with more the bulk of the success. Let's say that. More than that, the biggest email in the whole data pool is 6,580 words.
I'm sorry. I need you to say that number one more time.
6,580.
That is insane.
Which is 8% the length of the second Harry Potter book. Look, fair enough. Props to however that happened. I won't obviously say too much more on it. If it worked, then great. Who am I to say anything about it? But that's so big. I'm all for pattern interrupts, but that's something. I've seen one with a 50-word subject line. That's also something. But yes, the median average is 70 to 150, 140, around that mark. Again, if you try to put that into a phone, though, on a phone screen, that's even 70 is getting there right to the edge without being able to scroll.
Yeah.
50 is definitely a scroll. So as much as you can, it's the same thing with the subject line. What I've seen work and the ones that I get, having seen this data and sort of thought about it and thought about what it means, the emails that I now get occasionally, I do think when I look at them, that sentence, you didn't say a lot there, even though I understand what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
This sentence, you said probably 6 words that were filler or fluff, just like we all say and ah. There's that in email bodies. That sort of thing, it really could cut down, I wouldn't say 50% of the email, that's a lot. But you could easily 25%, 30%, if you've got a lot, 40%, cut some fluff out without removing the actual content or the context.
Right. And I think that's like the biggest challenge that a lot of SDRs have. And I know I had when I was an SDR is, you're trying to tell someone and convince someone the value of your product or solution or whatever. And we kind of default to the more the better. Like if I give you everything, something should stick. And if that thing sticks and you end up responding, great. But in reality, like you were saying, you want someone, you want to be concise and you want to be really specific with the value that you're trying to communicate to a prospect. If I give you 3 different things that I believe you could benefit from, and 2 of them are irrelevant to you, you might read those first and think, this email's not for me. But that third point, super relevant. If I just had that third point instead of the first 2, then the email itself is shorter. It's more targeted towards you, and you're more than likely going to respond versus the first email. So I think part of the length discussion comes into play with SDR research and sort of preparation, understanding the persona they're reaching out to, and just like the training that we give somebody who's ramping up in the role to just take this value prop, tweak it in some way and deliver it. Doesn't matter how long it is, just like get it across. And we kind of just default to longer is better, which is a problem. I'm of the opinion that the best tool an SDR can use is the delete button in any of their emails. Just like you were saying, if you can cut out fluff, you can cut out stuff that you don't need, and you can make it more targeted and more succinct, you're going to be better off 100% of the time.
Yeah, one of the things that I hear and see for VanillaSoft, especially as a system, the follow-up for a rep is always difficult. It's hard after a few attempts when you think, damn, what am I going to say this time? We've spoken maybe once or twice, or they've replied to a couple emails, but what can I say that's different this time out? And that's sort of one of VanillaSoft's things. But if you can take something out a little bit and just put it in your back pocket for later, it's another email that you've got. It's one in the bank. So if you're saying, hey, AJ, noticed you're doing a killer podcast tomorrow with a different guest, and I wondered how you're socially promoting that. Socially promoting is one. The next follow-up is how are you making sure you get more downloads? That's the same thing but said different. Mm-hmm. The next one is how are you getting more bang for your buck after you've got it published? Same thing but different. Just different ways of saying it is a different follow-up, but just a shorter sentence in that same email. Right. If you can try to sort of cut are you struggling with A and B and C, which is sort of the same thing, but just you've tried to make sure you covered it all. If you can cut it to A, then you still got B and C.
Mm-hmm. And I think that even addresses another issue where a lot of reps are not extending their cadences to be long enough or include enough touch points. And if you can shorten your first email and break it up into 3 emails, you automatically extend your cadence by 2 touches. I can't count on all my fingers or toes the amount of times that I've received one email from an SDR one time and then never heard from them ever again. Even if I was somewhat interested in the product, but I just didn't have time to take a look at it at that moment. It got buried in my inbox, but like I still recognize the name and I just don't hear from them again. Like it's gone. I'm looking at a competitor. I'm listening to a competitor. You've totally left my, purview. So I think that not only is it beneficial to shorten your emails, but like you were saying, extending your cadence is like monumentally important for reps right now.
Yeah, that 10 to 12 follow-ups. They have to come from somewhere.
Is that, I don't know if you have any data on that too. I know it wasn't part of the, we prep for this, everyone, just FYI. I don't know it wasn't part of any prep, but did you find like cadence length information at all? Or were you able to see like how many emails, realistically it took to get in touch with someone? Or maybe we need a follow-up podcast to talk about that.
You heard it here, folks. The vanilla soft devs are working on that. So I can talk about it sometime soon, but not right now. But okay. Yeah, our general thesis, and anecdotally, without having looked at the data but not really investigating it as much as I would try to now, and I am trying to, what we have seen is around 10 to 12 is the number of attempts.
I feel like that's pretty standard across. I mean, again, in SaaS, sort of that space, 10 to 12 touch points tends to be where you're either seeing responses or SDRs just give up. And then they try and pull somebody else from that account in and restart the cadence there. It's like, I think, and I knew I did this a lot as a new rep, but if I reached out to someone 12 times, I just felt like I was harassing them. Even if realistically it took, it would take that person 14 times to understand the value of your product or get hammered over the head with your name and brand enough to be like, okay, this is actually something that I do want to learn about. It's a fine line to toe.
Yeah. I've made a few cold calls to test the theory, and it was definitely, just on a personal level, it felt odd to hear that person again on the phone for like the second, third time, and you think, oh man, he knows what I'm going to say, but they don't care. They haven't remembered this unless you're you have a very strange name and they remember you, or you did a great job on the first time you spoke and
that's great.
They remembered the call, then at least you've got that, and they're never going to comment, hey, you said that before, come on.
Yeah, wait a minute, I know your name. All right, so we've talked about length. That's a controllable for SDRs, both subject line and in sort of the body of the email. You want to keep your subject line to around 4 words, and you want your email to be somewhere in that 70 to 140 range. One of the other things that you can control for as an SDR is when you send your email out. Timing is crucial. There's always data out there about the best time of day or best day to send an email, because realistically, when you think about it, like if your value prop is the best value prop in the world, but it falls on deaf ears, like it doesn't really matter. So I know you dug into some data on time of day and best day to send an email. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so I had 3 subsets here. So it was the email open rate, the click rate. So click rate meaning if there was a link or a vidyard, a Calendly, some other content, and anything of that nature bundled into one, and the reply rate. So which one do you want to jump into first?
Let's go top to bottom. So like the order that you just did, open, click, reply, in terms of what excites you the most as an SDR.
Okay, so open rate, Mondays was definitely the best.
Monday.
And by a distance, it's really not that much of a distance, but compared to some of the other average open rates that I had, obviously across the 7 days of the week, they were all kind of closely together. There's sort of not necessarily a bad day of the week to send an email, but the biggest difference was between first and second. So I can say Monday is the best, and we saw just below a 20% average open rate. So it gives you an idea of the rough number of opens per day. And then weirdly, Friday was second, and I say it's the biggest gap was between second and first. But again, it's still like high 16, 17% open rate, which I thought was a little low. But that means the rest of the week is kind of low. And I guess what you see through the rest of this is that the start of the week is sort of strong through most of the days of the week and the engagement across each type. But the end of the week, you don't really see that much engagement at the end of the week through the rest of the other metrics that I've got here. So I was curious about that when I saw, the better open rate is Friday as well as Monday, but the Friday doesn't appear in the top 3 for the click rate or the reply rate.
That is interesting. Yeah, maybe people, and this is just a theory right here off the cuff, but like if you get an email on Friday and it looks important enough for you to do something with it, but it's Friday afternoon and you don't want to spend Friday afternoon doing anything productive, I open the email, I look at it and I go, oh, I should do something about that. And then I mark it as unread, wait for the weekend to go by. Monday morning, I go back to that email and I actually do something. I click on a link, I whatever. That's just, something I do. And it maybe explains why Friday and Mondays are good for open rates, but Friday, maybe not so good for engagement. But I'm sure there's tons of reasoning as to why, Mondays are a good day for someone to open an email. Fridays are a good day for someone to open an email, but not engage with it. Let's talk a bit about, click rates and reply rates. How did that kind of factor into the Monday v Friday? And then obviously the rest of the days are important too, but where does it factor in?
So click and reply sort of lead you towards the midweek being slightly better, even though your open rate is better on a Monday. So just for the context, I didn't really say the list properly. So the open rate is best on a Monday, then a Friday, and then a Tuesday. The click rate is best on a Wednesday by a slim margin, only just better than a Tuesday, and then by a Monday. So kind of Monday and Tuesday seem okay. Wednesdays, this is the first time we've talked about it. It's got the best click rate, but reply rate again, Monday is the best by a distance, and Thursday second best, and Tuesday. So all things considered, when I've read Monday out in every single one of these metrics here, then clearly Monday is a decent day. But Friday, we only really see in the open rate, so I'm not so sure that's the best day of the week. Wednesday we only see once. Tuesday we see across all of them, so that must be a good one. And Thursday we see once.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't necessarily mean don't bother emailing on Friday, even though you get a good open rate, you're not going to get anything. There's not a good or bad day of the week to send an email. It's
right.
a good or bad day of the week for the prospect, which you don't know. They may be off that day. How often does that happen? It's sort of a lottery in terms of what the prospect has, but generally speaking, the midweek seems pretty strong, and the start of the week, where I think most people are come back from the weekend. Probably, what's the first thing you do? You probably end up looking at your email inbox. Yeah. Probably.
I hope better than like continuing to scroll like Reddit or something.
Yeah, like what am I doing this week?
Yeah. No, it's funny that you mentioned that, like, it's never a bad time for you to send an email, but it could be a bad time for someone to get an email. And there's tools and sort of data out there outside of what you've pulled that aggregates the best time and day to send an email. I actually just found one today from Growbots. They put together a full calculator about the best time to send an email based on, the job, your title you're reaching out to, the industry they're in, when the company was founded. Like, they really got super granular. And they have some good numbers in there. Like, for example, if you're in sales and you're a VP at a SaaS company, like, you want to send an email on Wednesday afternoon. But like, if that VP got his car hit on the way into work on that Wednesday afternoon, he's probably not going to be very chipper when he's responding to your email. So like, there's a human element in this that kind of goes unanswered with the data that you don't have to necessarily take into account. But like, if your numbers aren't matching with what, Ollie, you found, then you have to realize that everyone's a human. Like, you're reaching out to other people and they have stuff that happens to them that could just throw this data totally out the window.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about it. It's a correlation instead of a real. You have to apply it with what you know. You sort of can't just plug it immediately in and hope for a big fat pipeline. I mean,
right. Like,
that's what I want, but you do have to sort of apply it to how you know it. And if you think well, Monday mornings, I normally do my calls. Well, potentially your Friday afternoon, you write your emails to send Monday morning, and Monday morning and afternoon, you do your calls, or however you want to structure your routine based on what you see. There's slightly better and slightly worse times of the week where the email will land, and it's not send time. I should say it's receive time for the person. Of course, most of the time you can schedule anyways, but I can there will be a post about this which I can send to anybody who wants a full breakdown of the stats instead of my loose run over of it.
And we'll definitely include that in sort of like the follow up to this podcast and all that. We'll link it in there. Now, I think you brought up a really good point that I just wanted to touch on quickly before we kind of wrap things up. But a lot of this, you have to take with, as you said, 2 grains of salt, just based on the industry you're in or who you're reaching out to or whatever. But I think that the most important thing that an SDR can glean from looking at this data and kind of understanding some best practices and processes is just how to better structure your day. Because in reality, if you want to see success as an SDR, you need to have a well-structured day. You need to know when you're making your calls, when you're taking your demos, when you're sending your emails, and the more consistent, the better. And if you can take some of that consistency and match it up with the data that you found or data that you have in terms of best time to send emails, you're not going to magically grow your pipeline, but you're definitely going to help yourself. And there's no reason to not at least try and help yourself rather than just throw it out the window and not take any of this as data. Because it is like there's obviously, facts behind this.
Yeah, not just SDRs, like anybody, especially
Yes.
now, if you're if we're not going out too much or whatever else it is, I personally found I'm not that rigid on my own calendar, but the more that I am, it actually helps. It just sort of compartmentalizes my brain a bit more. So especially if you're selling where you're in charge of your own destiny and your own comp, then that's like the biggest one thing that I would do immediately, like 5 minutes ago, as AJ said.
Nice. All right, so let's wrap this discussion up. Taking all of the data that you've delivered to us here and comb through, understanding that there are benchmarks to work off of, but not set in stone. If you take all of this data and you normalize it against sort of like a control group or just some kind of takeaway that you can get from all of this data about cold email, what are people not doing that they should be doing after you've taken a look at all this?
It comes from an experiment that I'm personally running, and I ran it after I sort of got my hands on this data and was able to rip through it. And again, in the personal experience that I have of getting a few emails, it's not being mixed up that much. So there's not a variation on how long is the body of email. It's normally sort of the same type of thing. If you dreamt up what is the standard cold email that you're going to get looking like, they all look like that. There wasn't a video, there wasn't a GIF, there wasn't a different CTA, there wasn't a Calendly, there wasn't you name it. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can have. I felt like they all came midweek as well, which is weird considering some of the open rates and click reply rates that we were talking about. Generally, the experiment I'm running is just to try to use as many different tactics and as many different ways to make an email different from the last as I possibly can. So, like I said there, not many people have used a Vidyard, or you can use BombBomb, you can use Drift. There's a whole bunch of them. You can have a GIF that's sort of a little bit more old school, but again, not many people use it. So why the hell not? It's a bit of a differentiator. And if you do it well, this is sort of where you can flex your personalization muscles. You might say that English guy there, Ollie's a Liverpool Football Club fan, which is a soccer team over here in England. You might find a Liverpool football GIF, for example, and that immediately in my brain says, okay, right, this guy or gal, they have had a look, that they sort of know something about me, and it doesn't allow me to auto switch off from, all right, another template, away with it. It stops that from happening just that little bit. Even if it's slightly funny, if it's not even personalized to me, I'm trying to find different ways of just ensuring the cadence doesn't look exactly the same. Even if it says different stuff, I can sort of look at it and see, it's another one, or this is similar. I've seen this before.
Right.
Try to stop that, because like AJ was saying at the very start, a lot of people are getting a lot more email. So we have to try and do something that just makes it at least seem different, even if it's not from what other people are doing or from our competitors may be doing. There's not really a way to know what their inbox is going to look like, but you can at least try to just change what it looks like for them when they look at you and what you're doing to them.
I really like how you ended that. Like, you might not know what their inbox looks like, but based on the data that you pulled, more than likely they don't have videos or GIFs or anything in the emails that they're getting. So if you understand that and you try to be different, then more than likely you are going to be different just based on the data. And I would rather go off of data than off of sort of like the gut feel or just how I look at the industry now and how, everyone's saying you have to personalize emails, you have to include video, you have to do something different. Like, if I assume everyone's doing something different and I look for the next different thing, I'm probably not going to find it for a really long time, and I'm going to be struggling in the meantime to send out compelling emails. But if you fall into it now and then you think about the next thing after, you'll probably get better engagement now. And that's what we're trying to help with. Get you better email engagement now and in the future, but mostly now.
That's the thing as well. If you're selling to maybe a super serious industry, like maybe finance or IT and security, then you might, maybe a video where they have to click on a link might perform slightly less well. They might be more security conscious and think it's not what you intended it to be. Or maybe you think that a GIF is sort of goofy and it might not work well with the serious persona who's very busy and they don't care about that. They just want to know how you help. Well, have you tried that? Because I mean, seriously, every person has laughed in their life. Not every person has a hobby or in some way, even if it's very hard to find, there's always a different thing that can be done, especially for a video. I mean, I personally suck at doing video. I hate it. It's so awkward and I feel so goofy when I do it because I haven't done very many of them. But there's ways to do it without looking like a complete idiot, because you can do the screen one where it's just your screen, which everyone has done on a Zoom, everyone. Or you can do the screen with the face cam at the bottom. It's sort of like a thumb-sized picture of you. That's not too bad. Everyone's done a Zoom call with a prospect. If you're an SDR, you've probably done a discovery call where you're talking, and it's the same thing. It's just that demo that you did, or that quick rundown of how the product works or how it helps that certain pain or goal come to life. You can talk about that on a video, even if you don't really like doing video, or the other tools, I should say. But it's less about the medium you like. It's more of just, okay, I don't necessarily know which GIFs are very cool and funny at the moment, but I can search for a couple. Or I don't know how to do a fantastic video, but I can give it a shot,
Right?
Because it's different, and hopefully in a while I'll be able to have the data to tell me that, okay, well, my video got a lot of clicks but no one replied to it. Maybe what I showed them or what I said or how I said it or the call to action wasn't quite right, but people seem to bite on it as what it was. You get to that point with it, and then you're closer to getting even better replies.
Nice. Well, I really like everything you said today, Ollie. I like most of the things that you say all the time, but I think
you're too kind, buddy. You're just too kind to me.
If you really just sum up everything we talked about, there is data out there that you can use to help structure your day as an SDR and give yourself a better chance at having your cold emails looked at, clicked through, replied to. And if you really think about how that can help you as an SDR, it's in terms of how you can structure your day. And then the one thing that you should be doing that you probably aren't right now is just try to be different and really just injecting some personalization about yourself, about the prospect, and standing out from the crowd in your email. Those are the two things that I took away from this podcast with you, Ollie. And I would encourage everyone who's listening to do exactly those things.
You took two things away. I'm happy with that.
So Ollie, thank you so much for hopping on. Really appreciate it. I know you said you had a larger data set with numbers and whatnot that someone can comb through rather than just listen to this podcast. So I will include that sort of as a link to this so that someone can comb through it while they're listening to us. But if someone wants to learn more about you, about VanillaSoft, where can they find you?
I have a weird name, so if you search me on LinkedIn, I'm most likely the only one that comes up. I have a goofy picture as well, so that will help you know it's me. Yeah, just I'm always on LinkedIn, or failing that, if you like Twitter, then I have some fun over there. But yeah, if anybody at all has a question on, okay, well, what's the email open rate like at 9 a.m. or anything at all, just shoot me a note and I'll happily go through the data and tell you what I found, or whatever else there may be in the data that I haven't talked about. Just say the word and I'll go digging for it. I'll have a look.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ollie. This has been AJ with 5 questions. And until next time, good luck out there, SDRs.